Hello you guys and welcome to my channel. I am sharing all of my go-to shots for every wedding that I photograph. This is not going to be in any order of importance. I'm just going to kind of go in chronological order. So like start of the wedding day all the way to the end, all of my go-to must-have shots throughout the day. So the first, when I arrive at a wedding, I always do details. So details are always a must-have for me, but this can look different at every single wedding. Things that I always get are the rings. I prefer to have a nice pretty flat lay shot with the invitation suite, shoes, jewelry, perfumes, rings, all of that, but some people don't have that or forget to bring it, and that's totally fine. So my go-to shots are always a close-up details of the rings together. That can be on the bouquet or on a table somewhere with like a close-up of the rings. This also works. I've done a couple like elopements and stuff, so they won't have like invitations, so it's a lot easier just to get that close-up shot of their rings. Just making sure you get all of those little special details from the day, and that's something that I talk about with my couples before their wedding day. Anything special, unique, passed down that I need to make sure I capture, but definitely details, especially all three rings together, engagement ring and both wedding bands all together, that's on my must-have list. So moving on, obviously if it's a traditional wedding and there's bridesmaids and groomsmen, of course you're gonna do the group shots of the bride and the bridesmaid and groomsmen. I don't think that really needs to be said, but what I always do is individual pictures with the bride and each one of her bridesmaid, or the groom and each one of his groomsmen. Now some people don't want that, and that's fine, but it's always a go-to shot for me, just so you have an individual picture with every single person in your wedding party, and I think that's really special. I always do it. It's always my kind of go-to after the group photos is to do those individual, bride with each one of her bridesmaids, groom with each one of his groomsmen. Moving on from that, I always get bride by herself and groom by himself, so solo portraits. Usually it's a lot easier after the group shots, after them with each individual bridesmaid or groomsman. You send all the bridesmaids back upstairs, you send all the groomsmen back downstairs, and you get just individual portrait. And this is something that I think is so important because you're just capturing the memories of that day, right? And so having pictures of the groom by himself, honestly, I feel like most of the time you forget to do the groom by himself. It's just a must-have for me. I just think it's special to have that. I think it's special for the bride to have pictures of her groom by himself. And I know it was really special for my husband to have a picture of just me in my dress. He actually has like a little Polaroid of a picture of me in my wedding dress that he keeps in his wallet, which I find adorable. So always get individual portraits of the bride and individual portraits of the groom. So moving on to like ceremony, right? So all the ceremony details, most of the time it's like the shot down the aisle at whatever is at, I call it the altar, but we can call it a ceremony spot because most of the time it's not an altar. So the ceremony spot, sometimes there's a cross or an archway, some flowers, or sometimes it's just a very beautiful view. And so making sure to get that down the aisle shot at the ceremony is a must-have for me. I also get a close-up of just the flowers on the pretty archway or on the cross or something like that. So definitely getting like a close-up detail shot of that and that big down the aisle shot. So those two for ceremony are really, really important. Now we're at the ceremony. Obviously I'm getting pictures of everybody walking up the aisle, but one of my go-to shots, like must-have shots, is right when the bride, and usually bride and her dad, are seen at the aisle about to walk up. I'm looking at the groom taking pictures of his first reaction to seeing like his bride, and I'm telling you, it is the sweetest photos I think you'll ever have. And I always get just his first reaction. Sometimes he cries, sometimes it's just like a cute little smile, like excited smile, and it's just so sweet. I always get that because I'm always standing up at the ceremony spot right across from the groom. That's a must-have shot. And then I turn and get the bride coming up with usually her dad walking up the aisle. But yeah, usually they like round a corner or something opens and she is there. I don't really take pictures of that. I'm taking pictures of his first reaction, and then I'm turning and capturing walking up the aisle. So sweetest photo is some of my favorite photos from wedding days, to be honest. So now as the ceremony is happening, I always make sure to get a wide angle shot of most of the guests, depending on how much space I have and how big the wedding is. I try to get pretty much all the guests in the photos, taking a picture that way, just like a nice wide open shot, getting the scenery, like the whole thing. A lot of the time I've had weddings where it's up against the venue, so getting that wide angle shot and getting the whole venue behind them is really pretty. So definitely like a wide angle shot is a must-have for me. I'm going to put in kind of an obvious one is the kiss, and I'm gonna kind of make this a two-parter. The first part of the kiss is, pronounced husband and wife, you may kiss the bride, that one. That kiss is obviously very important, make sure you get that, but I also instruct my couples to kiss about halfway or at the end of the aisle. Most of the time it's a dip kiss. I love this because you get everyone behind, like looking at the couple. Sometimes they're cheering, and it's a little bit more casual and laid back than like that first altar kiss can feel a little awkward because everyone's just like staring at you. I don't know. This just feels a little bit more chilled. They're married, they're happy, and I just love that shot of them kissing like towards the end, or, you know, coming back down or up the aisle. Coming down the aisle or coming up the aisle? I think coming up. So after the ceremony, we're now getting into like couples photos, and I have a video talking about a bunch of couples poses that you can do on wedding day that I will link down below, as well as groom and groomsmen photo ideas and bride and bridesmaid photos ideas. I'll link all those down below. But couples portraits, there are two really specific shots that I always get, and one is a standard portrait. Now, this is probably like the most forgotten shot on a wedding day because you are thinking of trying to be creative and posing, and candid photos are very popular. They have been for a while, and I love them. They're great. I think it really can showcase a couple's personality, but I'm telling you, that standard portrait where they're both smiling and looking at the camera, it's one of those shots that in the moment you may not think you want it, but you will. And so I always make sure to get it. And if that is the only one where they are smiling and looking at the camera, okay, the rest can be candid, but that is one that is easy to give gifts to people, and it's what like grandma wants to hang on her wall. That's the photo. So definitely get that standard portrait. Like I said, it's probably the most forgotten pose because you're trying to be creative, and also your brain by that point is tired because you've just been shooting all day, you've been posing people. It's a lot of work basically up into the reception, so at that point your brain is pretty tired, just trying to think, and it's just, there's a lot going on up there. Write it down if you have to. Don't forget that standard portrait. Another pose, it's not necessarily a couple's pose, but I always get a close-up of their hands with their rings. So their new wedding bands on and the engagement ring, I always get a close-up of their hands together. And I do this because my photographer did that for us, and I don't know why, but I loved it. I love having a close-up of our hands. That sounds so weird, but like our hands with our rings, I don't know. I just love it. I love that. It was really nice because when we got married, we sent out thank you notes, and we actually used that picture of our hands on our thank you notes. Like, I got them printed. I really like it. It's one of my go-tos. I do it every single wedding. Okay, moving on to like introductions have already happened, receptions happening. Their first dance usually is what happens after introduction. So first dance, I always get a close-up of them dancing and a wide shot of them dancing with everyone behind them, preferably guests, but sometimes it is like bridesmaids and groomsmen and like a horseshoe behind them. So getting a close-up of them dancing and a wide shot of them dancing. I think sometimes we only get the one, like either it's like wide angle the whole time or close-up the whole time. I like to do both. I should also mention that I shoot on two camera bodies, so one usually has a wider angle, like a 35 or a 50. I say wider. I say wider because the other one has an 85, and a 35 and a 50 are wider than an 85, okay? That's why I'm saying they're a wide angle. I understand there are wider angled lenses, and I understand that it may not fall into that category, but that's why I'm calling it a wider angle, because it's wider than the 85 that I have on my other camera, and I love my 85, and no one can convince me otherwise that it's not the best lens there is. So close up of dancing and big shot of dancing. Moving on to the actual reception, anytime the bride and groom are on the dance floor, that's what I'm gonna say. Of course, you're getting pictures of other guests dancing and having fun, but if the couple, because sometimes there are weddings that the couple doesn't go on the dance floor very much because they're talking. I mean, they have lots of guests, they're talking, they're interacting, they're catching up, it's all fine and dandy, but if they hit the dance floor, I'm taking pictures of them because you can tell a lot of the couples are having just the most amount of fun dancing on their wedding day. It's fantastic. So anytime a couple hits the dance floor, you know I am there taking pictures of it. That and old people. If old people are dancing with each other to a slow song or a fast song, if old people are on the dance floor dancing, I'm taking a picture of them. I'm taking a picture of all the older people dancing and getting it because we love to see it. Another go-to always get photos for me are sunset photos. Now this will depend on the time of year. Right now we're in summer at the time of filming this. The sunset's later, so you are able to grab the couple to go out and do sunset photos during the reception. And I love sunset photos. It gives like such a more relaxed vibe because I'm gonna be real with you. A lot of couples get kind of burnt out. They get photo fatigue is what I call it because we've been taking pictures of them getting ready, taking pictures of them, you know, doing the ceremony, now family photos. And family photos, there's a lot of moving pieces in that and it can get a little overwhelming. And then we go into bridal party, then we do couples portraits. So like by the couples portraits, most of the time they're pretty worn out when it comes to photos. By that time, they're pretty tired. And so more often than not, we kind of cut couples portraits a little short, knowing that we're gonna get sunset photos later, okay? I always have my go-to poses for couples on wedding days, and I always make sure to get like shots that are really important to them. And I move pretty quickly through couples portraits, so I'm able to get a lot during that time. But when I know we're gonna do sunset photos later, and I can tell that the couple's done, we'll call it for sunset photos, which is why I love sunset photos. They're a little bit more informal, so most of the time the bride will not have her bouquet. Sometimes she's changed her hair. They've kind of been refreshed, they've eaten dinner, they're down to like frolic in front of their venue and get those photos. Now, I want to do them, obviously. I love them. I think they're really great. I want to give them more photos with each other, which I think is always really important on a wedding day, but I always make that contact. Even if they are in the middle of the dance floor dancing, I just take them aside for a second, ask if they want to, and if they say no, then that is their decision. I don't want to not make the ask because I would rather them tell me no, and it's totally fine if we don't do sunset photos, but I always make the ask. Always touch base to see if that's what they want. Most of the time, they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, let's do it. Like, they're not checking their watch, and that's not their responsibility to be like, oh, it's sunset time, we need to go take photos. That's my responsibility to keep track of that and then make the ask. So I always get sunset photos, or at a minimum just make the ask. Make sure they know that it's sunset photo time, and if they want to opt out, totally fine. The last shot is always an exit. If there's a special exit, definitely get that, of course. I think that's a no-brainer. But if they're getting into a car, I love the getting into the car shot. I don't know why, I love it in black and white. Like there's one that I'm gonna put from a recent wedding. She's like waving. It looks like a paparazzi moment and I just love it. So I always get them, if they're getting into a car, get them getting into the car. So yes, the exit is like a duh, but sometimes once they walk by you, you like, some people just stop taking pictures. I turn around and get them getting into the car. I think it makes for some sweet moments and some pretty cute pictures, so getting into the car is another one of my go-to. I have no idea how many I just said. I kind of did not write anything down. I just wanted to kind of talk through this one. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope it helps you with photographing your next wedding. If you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye!